Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Regional Development Assessment Panel meeting of the 17th of October. My name's Tony Arias and I'm the presiding member. I'll introduce the other members. Dale Page, Deputy Presiding Member. Nima Premji, Specialist Member. For Part B of the agenda, which is City of Busselton, we've got Councillor Ryan and Councillor Cox. And for Part C, which is City of Bunbury, we have Councillor Kozisek. We have representatives from the DAP Secretariat, Christine Parker, who's Minute Secretary, and Ashley Kelly, Governance. So with that, I will formally declare the meeting open at 2:05 and acknowledge that we are hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia and pay respects to elders past and present and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website. Panel members may refer to technical devices to assist them in considering the information before them. Item 2, apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Brown from the City of Bunbury and Councillor Andrew, also City of Bunbury, in relation to Part C of the agenda. Item 3, members on leave of absence, we have Neil. Item 4, noting of minutes, just for information that minutes of previous meetings are on the DAP website. So we move to Part B, which is City of Busselton. Item 1, declarations of due consideration. Members, are you able to declare that you've considered the information that's been presented, Part B of the agenda? You can do that by simply raising your hand.
Sorry, I can't get my, it's Councillor Cox here. I can't get my video to it, but I confirm that I have done so.
Thank you, Councillor. So all duly declared. Item 2, disclosures of interest. We have one disclosure from Dale Page and its impartiality. Ms Page has worked with Craig Smith, who has been involved in the design review for item 4.1. The impartiality interest has been considered by the DAP Executive Director, and in accordance with standing orders, the Executive Director has determined that Ms Page can sit in on the meeting and vote on the item. Members, particularly local government members, if the item has been for a council meeting, standing orders requires declaration. I don't know whether that's been the case in relation to item 4.1. No?
No, it has not.
Right, thank you for clarifying that. Members, any other declarations? If not, thank you. We move to item 3, Form 1 applications. We have nil. Item 4, Form 2 applications. And we do have one, item 4.1, lot 108, 109 and 110, Dunbury Road, Dunsborough. And it's said a Form 2, relocation of multi-purpose room, deletion of balconies and minor room reconfiguration. We have 3 presenters that have been approved. Just a reminder to presenters, you have 3 minutes, and I will sort of remind you when your 3 minutes is up. So the first one is Nick Derricks. Nick, over to you.
Sorry, member, if we could, if I could ask if we could present as a group sequentially, if that's okay. Yes,
and who wants to lead off?
I might let Matthew lead and give a bit of background. I will then follow, and then Nick can finish with some of the perspectives.
Right, in which case, happy for you to do that. You each get 3 minutes, and we'll ask questions at the end of the 3 presentations.
Sure, thank
you. So, Matthew, do you want to lead off then?
Yeah, happy to. I'll be very, very quick, guys. Just wanted to introduce myself, Matthew Rawlinson from Bellingback, who are the developer and owner of the asset. In short, the project was approved back in December 23 as a 54-room boutique hotel. I mean, I guess the intention of the hotel and the thesis around it is to provide very good quality accommodation at an appropriate price point. And we feel like this project is very suitable for the location. I guess the changes that we have decided to make have been, I guess, a combination of design development and commercial changes throughout typical design development processes. So, yeah, that's really it from me, team.
All right, thank you. So Nick, over to you. Or Dane?
Yeah, I can continue on. So that kind of briefly outlined the changes, and thank you to the City of Busselton staff for their RAR. That fleshes out those changes in a bit more detail. There are obviously the built form changes that have been put forward as part of this application. And I guess the key change that wasn't anticipated, but that we have included, relates to the trees in response to the removal of those trees through the demolition process, which occurred without the knowledge or consent of the proponent. So just briefly, the changes to the proposal remain very consistent with the state and local planning framework. In terms of a building height and scale perspective, I'll just point out an error on this slide. The maximum building height requirements are actually 4 stories in response to the latest amendment, but maintaining that, the plot ratio has actually dropped since the original approval from 0.86 to 0.83, and that's well within the revised plot ratio maximums under the scheme now. So we've maintained a high level of consistency throughout. The car parking situation has now been improved through the changes. So the relocation of the transformer has freed up additional space for additional car parking, so the addition of 2 bays. And the reduction in plot ratio has also reduced the overall car parking requirement by a single bay as well. So we've actually improved the compliance from that perspective, which is positive. In terms of the RAR and the conditions, and Nick will speak to this shortly in a bit more detail, but we believe that the existing condition 6.3 remains fit for purpose, notwithstanding the removal of the parapet, and that's because it still captures the essence of the requirement to either locate services appropriately to avoid the need for screening, or to screen the services if they are required. So Nick will kind of take us through some perspectives in a moment, but the essence of our request is to maintain the existing condition as it is with regards to condition 6.3, and not introduce the new condition, which is not required in our view. And the basis of that is that the screening would only be necessary if the services were not visible from the street, which we do not believe they will be. But I'll hand over to Nick to talk us through that in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Dane. Can you zoom in a little bit more on those, if possible, please, Dane? Thank you very much. So these are drawings based on a person standing on the opposite side of the street, about 50 metres further beyond the actual project itself. And as you can see, the services on top of the roof have actually been set back into the middle portion of the volume, so as to avoid any visibility from the street on both sides. What we've also managed to do is actually locate any mechanical plant, which are the higher of the two, the main services on the roof. They've been located in the central portion with the solar panels either side. So looking at the, whether or not actually adding the aluminium as a material to the parapet, we realised in doing these studies that it was extra costs and extra material use, which doesn't need to be implemented. Thanks.
That is it. So happy to take questions if there's any queries on that.
Okay, well, certainly well under the 3 minutes each. Thank you. Members, questions?
I don't have any questions on the presentation, but I was down there a couple of hours ago and having a look. The trees that have been cordoned off are staying. Is that correct?
I'll just zip to our landscape plan so we can kind of talk to that.
My belief is that they're requesting removal of those existing the trees that are left, Councillor Ryan.
No.
I could talk to that one if you wanted to, Dane.
Yep.
So if you zoom up the page a little bit, there is one tree that is on site currently, which is, so all the trees that you can see on site now, the 6 major significant trees, are all to be retained.
Yep.
There is one that has been left, and if you look at the accessible car bays on the top left-hand side of the page, there is actually an existing tree there, which is a non-native tree that will be removed as part of this process.
Cool.
But those 3 peppermint trees that you can see, they're large.
Yes.
they will all be retained.
And in the one that is non-highlighted to the left,
Is a new tree.
where the mouse is, was there was a tree there previously, which the contractor did remove when he was digging up some concrete slabs in the house, unfortunately, and didn't notify us of it. Look, the signature moment in this asset is the courtyard, and that is the key focal point of the building. Every room is surrounded by the courtyard, and we are very, very motivated to retain those trees that are still on site.
Excellent. I did wonder how you were going to do it, but that's really good. Thank you.
Members?
Thank you, Presiding Member. I just have a follow-up question on the issue of the trees, and I guess it comes from a point of concern that a proponent isn't always able to manage contractors and what they do on site. Currently, the condition about the tree protection plan says it needs to be implemented before substantive development occurs. It's probably more a question for the city staff. Would it offer any additional protections for those remaining trees if that condition was amended to state that the tree protection plan should be implemented before the building permit is submitted and accepted, or doesn't it make much of a difference?
So perhaps, Andrew, you can take that on notice, but Dave, did you want to respond to that?
I can answer the question now if you wish.
Andrew, I prefer not. I prefer to go through the presentations, and then we'll get, if you could perhaps just for a shadow response.
Okay. Just another couple of short questions. So could you describe to me the key differences between the folded mesh that you're proposing to use now versus the previous materials that were proposed? What is the key difference between them?
I can talk to that. Thanks for the question. The key difference is the original design implemented solid rectangular hollow sections as a way of providing the screening. During the process of design development, since concept design, we actually needed to put an actual size on that. There were two main reasons that we went to a perforated mesh, the main one being weather protection for those the guests walking along the corridor, as well as, we must say, a cost implementation and actually being able to build it. So The mesh screen was a preference from our point of view architecturally as an iconic gesture to the street front, but it mainly protected the occupant as the main practical solution to that screen.
Okay, and has the city been provided with the details of that material? Have they got that information at this point, or is that intending to only come later as part of the schedule of colours materials?
It has been described as a perforated mesh in the materials schedule, but we are more than happy to provide the actual plans and elevation details of the screen if required. I'm not sure if they have been forwarded yet to the city as part of the amended DA.
Members, any other questions of the presenters?
I just wanted to go back to the tree removal, noting in the RAR that the City of Busselton staff wrote, an inspection of the site in July 2024 identified that no tree protection measures had been implemented on site, and the removal of 3 significant trees had been undertaken that were indicated as being retained. The applicant notes that the accidental removal of the trees occurred and understand the importance of retaining trees. And then I do also note that one of the conditions in the original approval stated that there was to be, with the removal of peppermint trees, a fauna handler on site in case of ringtail possum presence. Did that occur, or the trees would? Firstly, yeah. I suppose my first question: were there 3 significant trees accidentally removed, and was there any controls around those trees being removed? Was there a fauna handler on site, or none? There was no compliance with that.
So I'll talk to the compliance first. So yeah, we did issue the tree protection plan to the contractor, and we did pay for a possum spotter as well. So it is expected that they were definitely there. And then in regards to the 3 trees that were removed, there's a bit of confusion there, which Nick, you might be able to talk to in a bit more detail.
Yeah, I can go through there was one, when we say significant, it was actually the peppermint tree that Matt described earlier as being a gnarly tree that was underneath an existing slab. The other tree that had been removed, and it seemed to be it was based on the initial survey. In fact, on site during the demolition of the 3 houses, the tree to the north was not actually there, and it looked like it had either died and been cut down by the tenant at that point in time. It was actually initially indicated along that northern boundary, and that wasn't there. So it was only, in fact, one significant tree, which was underneath the peppermint tree, underneath the slab of the middle block, which Dane has his cursor on. The other peppermint tree that was removed and was part of the initial DA was actually underneath where the hotel lobby is proposed to be. So that would have been, unfortunately we had to remove that one as part of the development, but the 3 that are retained in the courtyard are significant peppermint trees. And I just would like to add as well that part of this amendment is the removal of the western balconies as well. Part of that design change was actually to maintain the 3 significant trees on the western boundary as well, which were likely to be removed as based on the previous design. So we do acknowledge that, yeah, during the contractor's initial demolition, the internal peppermint tree was removed. The quality of it is questionable, but independent of that, it should have probably been highlighted by the contractor at the time, but we have managed to save 3 very large trees in this process.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one more question with regard to the use. We were just talking about the folded screening recently, or the exposed concrete. Is it going to be both, or is it going to be exposed concrete or the folded, what was it? How was that described? On the exterior of the building instead of the original screening?
It'll be on the front facade. Dane, you might be able to just go to the Bunbury elevation, which is not on that page. It'll be, yeah, this is the front elevation. The two panels on the left, in between grid 1 and 2, and then in between 1 and 4, say, are going to be exposed class 3 finish concrete panels. And then the rest will be the full height double story perforated mesh folded. The intention for that is that during the night time it'll be backlit as part of the walkway for the guests, but it'll also offer a little bit of activation on the street as well.
So the exposed concrete will be visible from Bunbury Road?
Correct, yes.
And are you amenable to perhaps putting some artwork or some kind of design on there? Because that could look potentially not that visually appealing from the street if it is just exposed concrete.
Yeah, I guess it's all subjective. I mean, we think that the class of finish that we're going to detail of that surface is quite beautiful in the fact that it's raw material. But certainly we are looking at, we are proposing currently that there's artwork within the courtyard, but there's probably more so for that concrete is to have some beautiful signage and lighting on it as well. So yeah, we think
just given that we've just done a lot of character work around the character of Dunsborough and the Dunsborough town site, and a very industrial look may not be necessarily in keeping with that. So I guess just being mindful of perhaps of that, if it depends, as you said, it's subjective, depends how it looks when it's finished, but perhaps being mindful of that.
Yeah, no, that's thanks for the comment. And we are mindful of how that is detailed. It's not going to be your typical industrial shed detailing of that concrete wall. It'll be a neat, we've got to put some effort into getting the contractor to make that a neat, nice wall, which is architecturally finished.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any final questions of the presenters? If not, thank you, gentlemen, for the presentations. We now move to the City of Busselton offices with Andrew Watts. And Andrew, you have a colleague there as well.
Yes, presiding member. I also have Emma Craddock here.
All right, okay. Andrew, in terms of do you want to make any overall comments about the Form 2 application, or do you want to go straight to questions?
I'm happy to go probably straight to questions, in that the applicants have generally described pretty well the changes to the development from the previous approval from end of 2023. I guess in terms of, I'm happy to go to questions, particularly if any of the members want to restate the questions that were designed for the city previously.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Page, did you want to?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. So just to restate the question that I put earlier, is there any benefit from your perspective of tweaking that condition 3.9 to require implementation of the tree protection plan before the building permit is submitted and accepted, or doesn't it make that much difference at this point?
I don't know that it makes any difference, in that the condition currently is a prior to commencement condition, which basically means it should be prior to any works actually happening. In terms of saying prior to a building permit being issued, we have previously received advice that typically you can't actually, or shouldn't actually be saying prior to building permit, because that's a different application process. So it's separate from an approval under the Planning and Development Act. And in this instance, it was not actually prior to a building permit issued, it was actually would have been prior to the demolition permit being issued. As part of the demolition permit being issued, the contractor was specifically advised, both verbally and in writing, that there was an existing condition requiring the tree protection plan, that they need to be aware of that, and the tree protection plan, notwithstanding the fact that the applicant has said that it was supplied to the contractor, the condition actually requires that it's submitted to the city and actually approved by the city, which it had not been. But the demolition contractor was specifically advised by our building services staff of that condition, and that both the tree protection plan needed to be approved and it also should be implemented prior to any works commencing. But clearly, that didn't happen.
Thank you for that. And another question, if I may. So just in terms of the perforated metal replacement, the applicant has said they're not sure if that's been provided, the details of that material have been provided to the city yet. Could you confirm whether or not that has been received yet?
Whilst information that it's intended to change that material, the more specific detail hasn't been provided to the city at this point, no, but that can be captured by the condition that already exists on the approval requiring the details of materials and finishes.
Thank you. Just to follow on, do you have the ability with your design review panel to refer the schedule back to them, or at least discuss it with them, or at the very least the chair of that panel? The reason I'm asking is that it changing a material like that could substantially impact the quality of the aesthetics and the ongoing maintenance of the building. So whilst you no doubt have the expertise in-house, is there the ability to run that back through your panel?
Possibly not specifically in the terms of reference for the DRP. We potentially, if we had had a bit more detail on it, could have potentially tried to take that, done a further design review on this amended application. However, the timeframes that we have to consider the application probably would have precluded the ability to really get that back to the DRP.
Okay, thank you. Last question, if you don't mind, presiding member. The report talks about waste management and the fact that the amended floor or ceiling heights are acceptable because the intended waste contractor can still access that area to deal with waste. What is the contingency from the city's perspective, if anything, about that changes? There have been previous instances with development where the intended waste contractor no longer has that kind of equipment or infrastructure, and then we have waste dealt with in a different way. Have you thought of what the contingency would be if that changed?
From the city's perspective, that's probably a commercial risk for the developer. Whilst we typically would query certain aspects of the waste management plan, particularly in terms of elements that would be more under the city's control. So if they were seeking for the city to undertake waste management or provide some waste management services rather than have their own private contractor, that would be more of an issue. We would certainly be more concerned about elements that may specifically fit within requirements of health local laws or other health legislation related to bin storage areas and the like. But ultimately, the developer bears the commercial risk of whether they've still got the ability to service service their development and how they're going to deal with the waste management.
Thank you.
Members, Ms Premji?
Thank you, Presiding Member. I've got a question to the city officers. You see in the presentation just given by the applicant, they're questioning the insertion of condition 3.15, and whereas they have already stated that condition 6.2, which is in the initial approval, will also meet that requirement. What is it in condition 6.3 is lacking that the city officers thought it was necessary to actually introduce condition 3.15?
Probably what was lacking is the information that they've now provided with their presentation that they've given us today, in that previously it was not clear how the removal of that parapet would affect the visibility of any of the services that are on the top of the building. They've given us a bit more detail now in terms of sight lines from somebody who's on the ground, etc., and shown how that the building itself, when viewed from ground level, would help to screen the services, with the services being positioned further into the middle. That's probably the detail that kind of detail maybe would have been the kind of information we needed to deal with 3.15. Or otherwise, if they weren't able to provide that kind of detail, it would have been okay, you need to provide some sort of parapet similar to what there was on the previous approval, and that would assist in screening the services on top. So I guess in summary, with the additional detail that the applicants have now provided, should the panel be of the mind to not want to include 3.15, the city probably wouldn't object to that.
So so you wouldn't object to that then?
Not now that the applicants have given a bit more detail about how visible or otherwise the services on the roof will be with the current design.
And you will receive these details anyway, according to the previous conditions that have been put on the application.
Possibly, we were just kind of a little bit concerned with the changes that have been made to the building about whether or not they were going to be feasible, and whether or not the other condition really was strong enough in that it wasn't a prior to commencement condition.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any other questions? Andrew, just a point of clarification, and perhaps I could have put this to the presenters. The demolition that's taken place on site, is that fully completed?
My understanding is that all the buildings have now been removed. I would probably have. Okay. Councillor Ryan, who's been out there more recently than I have, is suggesting otherwise.
This morning, Andrew, about 10 o'clock, I was out there. It's started to be demolished, but it hasn't yet. There's still brick, and I'm wondering, I don't want to put alarm in there, whether there was asbestos in the building or something, because it's been started. The whole area has been cleared apart from the house, so not sure what's going on there.
Okay. But in information that I've received from another officer a few weeks back was that they believe that the demolition would have been completed by now, but maybe there has been some hold-ups in that. Typically, I would be waiting on advice from our building services staff as to whether or not they believe that the demolition has been satisfactorily completed in accordance with the demolition permit.
All right, thank you. I guess the reason for the question, if it hasn't been completed, given the commentary around the trees and tree protection, perhaps a suggestion to the applicant that measures are put in place if the demolition's not complete to ensure the trees protection. Members, other questions? If not, Andrew, thank you for responding to questions. So, members, we now move to the actual item, and we've got a recommendation in the RAR to approve the Form 2 subject to 2 amended conditions and 1 new condition. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation in the RAR?
Happy to move.
Councillor Ryan. A seconder? Ms. Premji? Councillor Ryan, did you want to talk to that motion?
No, I think everything's been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Premji?
You're on
mute.
Thank you. Yeah, no, nothing further to add. I'm happy with the information that's been provided today.
Thank you. Is anyone opposed to the motion?
No, Mr. Presiding Member.
Anyone else wanting to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yes, look, in this circumstance, I'm happy to accept that this is a Form 2, but I would suggest for future similar applications, given the type of material replacement that's been contemplated here and the lack of information being presented on that material and the impact, there's no renders of what is a substantial development for Dunsborough, and I would have hoped that at least a render would be provided to show the variation in the material, which could potentially render it beyond the scope of a Form 2, depending on the impact on the building. So, and in this circumstance, happy to accept it as a Form 2, but would suggest that in future that be looked at very carefully, because even just a material change could substantially impact the design of the building. And I would recommend not conditioning it, but recommend that when the detail of that material comes through and that schedule of materials comes through, that the city perhaps talks with somebody through a design review process about that, just to make sure that you are covered in terms of the quality and the ongoing maintenance of that building.
Thank you. I'll also be supporting the motion. In terms of the proposed changes, based on the information that's been provided, I don't consider they significantly alter the original proposal so from that perspective, happy to support it. I think the conditions proposed by the council as amendments and the existing conditions provide sufficient management controls. I think the only other comment I would make to the applicants is just be mindful of the retention of those trees that have been indicated. So yes, I'll support the motion. Councillor Ryan, you moved the motion. Did you want to make any closing comment?
I'd just like to reaffirm the same thing about the trees. They're substantial in nature, and I like the idea of the courtyard, and I think it would be very sad to see the trees, any further trees, go. So I would hope that the demolition guys are very careful with how they proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. So we've got a motion to approve the Form 2 application with 2 amended conditions, 1 new condition and an advice note. All those in favour?
I also support. Thank you. Mr. Presiding Member.
Thank you, that's unanimous. So item 5, section 31 SAP reconsiderations, we have nil. So that brings to close part B of the agenda. Representatives from the City of Busselton, you're welcome to stay on, or you may depart. Thank you. So we now move to part C, which is the City of Bunbury. So we have Councillor Kosicek. Yep.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, terrific. Okay. So item 1 is declarations of due consideration. Members, are you able to make declaration in relation to items part C and related information part C? Just raise your hand if you're able to make that declaration. Or duly declared, thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Once again, Ms Page has made a disclosure impartiality interest, having worked with Craig Smith, who has been involved in the design review for this item in a previous role at the City of Perth. The impartiality interest has been declared by the RDAP Executive Director, who has determined that Ms Page, given the nature of the impartiality interest, can participate and vote on the item. Members, are there any other declarations? I will also remind Councillor Kosicek, if the item's been to council meeting, standing orders requires a declaration to be made. No?
No, it hasn't been. No.
All right, thank you for the clarification. So we move to item 3, which is Form 1 DAP applications, lot 76 and 66 Ocean Drive, Bunbury, and it's 10 holiday accommodation units. We do have one presenter, Callum Thatcher. Callum, you have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, panel members. Thank you for the opportunity to present this afternoon to support in support of this item and recommendation. My name is Callum Thatcher from Element, representing Oriental Properties, landowner of lot 76, Ocean Drive, Bunbury. Also have with me, not on camera, but the architect Ross McDonald and project manager Ivan Wang's also in the meeting with me as well. We'd firstly like to thank the City of Bunbury for their efforts with this proposal. This project's been highly collaborative with the city to ensure the proposal aligns with both the existing planning framework as well as the cohesive aspirations to the site. To provide some background, the site's existing planning framework was heavily structured towards promoting mid-rise, medium-density tourism-based development. This market, since the adoption of the Back Beach structure plans, has significantly changed, which has resulted in the Back Beach locality remaining vacant for a significant period of time. This has required some reconsideration as to the development products, which balances providing much needed housing given the extremely low vacancy rates in Bunbury, whilst offer some ability for short stay accommodation. The proposed townhouses have been architecturally designed to offer maximum flexibility in the way they're used for future occupants. Of note is the ability for the self-contained dwelling on the upper floors, which can be used for multi-generational living or provide short-term housing needs. The townhouses have utilised the topography of the site, providing an undercroft garage, internalising vehicle access, whilst maintaining a 2-storey height to upper esplanade. The proposal has been designed to largely align with the new R codes and current structure plans, as well as the project being positively received by the city's design review panel. We believe this format of housing is fulfilling multiple housing needs in the high amenity location. Consideration of the proposal has also been given to how the development will link and tie into future stages. The proposed development represents stage 1, with the future stage proposed subject to modifications to the current planning framework. This is currently in conversation with the City of Bunbury. As part of this application design, we have given consideration to future stages, ensuring the development is not prejudicial to future developments of the site. This includes given consideration to lot layout, site work, servicing public open space. We strongly believe this proposal is consistent with the planning framework, and most importantly is delivering flexible yet high quality housing solution to the City of Bunbury. We appreciate your time and welcome any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Members, questions? Ms. Primji?
You mentioned stage 2. When did you orient us looking at developing stage 2?
Thank you. Questions through the chair. So a scheme amendment process is required for stage 2. The planning framework's sort of been geared, that's particularly to the northern side where stage 2 is located. It's been particularly geared towards hotel, more multi-storey development, and the planning framework's quite challenging to use in terms of to try and roll out a sort of a lower density or medium density type housing product. So what we'll actually need is we will need to go through a 12 to 24 month scheme amendment process, which may also require a local development plan. So we're currently working through that with the City of Bunbury and also the state government. So it'll be impending on that process. But I think the landowner obviously has every intention to move this next stage as quickly as possible. So the scheme amendment has been drafted and we're having those conversations with the city currently.
Thank you. That's all.
Members, any other questions? No. All right, Callum, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
So we now move to the City of Bunbury offices. And we've got Tasoni Tadasi and Annalise Miller. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's
correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
So who's going to lead off? Who's going to respond to questions?
It'll be a mixed bag, I think.
Yeah, but I will start for the summary of the development without repeating what the applicant says.
Okay, no problem. Does anyone want to sort of just lead off with any general comments about the application before we go to questions?
Yes, I'll try my best. And I'll try to give you some 5 main points about this proposal. The first one is the applicant has been in contact with us since the beginning of this year. And secondly, prior to the formal application, the development was tabled for the joint development, the joint design review panel, and then they provided some suggestion. And thirdly, a formal application submitted by the applicant, including those comments from the joint design review panel. And that formal application includes the main structures are 10 townhouse holiday accommodation, 2 vehicle access from the upper esplanade, internal laneway, pedestrian footpaths, and 8 on-site parking and 9 visitors parking, and public open space. We advertised the development application in August. We received 7 submissions, 1 of which is support and 6 objections. The objections are based on the traffic and also climatic change, but which we have addressed in our reports. And then the city assessed based on the applicable statutory requirements. And then we are satisfied that it's complies with the back pitch structure plan and also the scheme requirements, notably clause 27.2, which allows holiday accommodation to be as permanent or as temporary. That's why we proceed the assessment. If anything, probably my colleagues can add.
I think that's everything.
Thank you. Maybe I will lead off with a question. Yeah, you made a comment about the planning framework, and the RAR seems to indicate it complies with the current planning framework. Mr. Thatcher did make a comment about the planning framework changing. Are you able to make comments about that?
I think, as I gather, what he's saying is probably the structure plans were just statutory documents in the past, but now we have to have due regard for the structures plan. And also we know that in the future, the stage 2 development will require scheme amendment and also local development plan if that's required. So probably that's what he's touching on his comment.
Did you want to ask, sorry for the presiding member, did you want to understand what might be proposed in stage 2? Is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, no problem. So as Callum and Tash have explained, we've been working with the applicant quite closely. They're looking at the moment under the current planning framework, you can't have like a single house because of the tourism zoning. So they're looking at rezoning it from tourism to residential, which will open up those kind of land uses. But as Callum said, it still has to go through the process. We haven't had it initiated by council or gone through community consultation yet.
Okay, but the current application, in terms of unrestricted stay, the scheme allows for that.
Yes. So at the moment, through our scheme, so it's approved as holiday accommodation, but we have a clause in our scheme which allows holiday accommodation to be used permanently if it meets the required R codes and building requirements. So that is where the flexibility can be had, where it can be used for either.
All right, thank you. Members, questions? Ms. Premji?
Nothing significant. It's a very well prepared report, and I commend both the city and the applicant working so well. Condition 15 has got a legal agreement to it. Just wanted to know who's going to bear the cost. Is it going to be the applicant?
Yes, it will be the applicant.
Has that been understood, or does it need to be defined here because it's not? Usually you have the word at the cost of the landowner or something like that.
Yes, the city would be happy to amend that. Our previous discussions have been that it would be to the cost of the landowner.
So just to avoid any potential disagreements, I think we'll probably do that. The other one was condition 27. I think it's just a typo. I don't think that we have a calendar month called Mary. I think it's May. So it was just a typo.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, with the waste management plan, are you happy with the waste management plan with the city? Because there seems to be a few options you can give for the picking up the waste, the 3-bin system.
Yes, it's been referred internally to our waste team who reviewed and approved the plan.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have, presiding member.
Thank you.
Ms. Premji, any other questions?
I have a couple of minor ones.
Yes, far away.
Mr. Presiding member, just a couple of minor questions for the city. I note that in your terminology used in some of your conditions, it varies between requiring things to be done prior to submission of a building permit or a building application, and then some conditions talk about requiring things to be done prior to issue of the building permit. So I just wanted to check whether or not that was intentional and whether there was a specific reason for that. And if not, whether or not you would want to consider making it consistent and requiring those things to be done before submission. I'm just mindful that as soon as the building application is lodged, you lose control of that under the Building Act and you've got your 10 days. So to make something prior to issue makes it very difficult. Is there a reason you use the 2 different sets of wording?
Probably that one comes from the details of engineering requirements. So we want to make sure that the drawings that will be provided will be not taking long time when we are assessing it, and then giving them that information so they can go back, and then the development cost will be increased. So that's why we said, show us the plan before you submit. The details to be provided before and you submit a building permit. Probably our development engineer can expand on that one.
Just sorry, can I just confirm? I understand why you do that, but you some of the conditions you say before you submit, and some of the conditions you say before we issue, and I think you should be consistent. Is just my view, and I'm wondering if you'd be amenable to be consistent, and if you want it before submission, then perhaps they should all be before submission, because If it's before issue, they can lodge the building permit any time. You've got your 10 days to issue it, and then you don't have the time to deal with it. So I was just seeking clarification whether or not it was intentional that you've used different terminology in different conditions.
Thank you for the presiding member. I think ultimately we're after the same kind of outcome, and I acknowledge your comments that we won't be able to hold up with building permits. So yes, we'd be happy to change the conditions so that they're all consistent prior to the submission of the building permit.
Okay, mindful that there's quite a few that need to be dealt with then. Just one other thing, condition 14 relates to implementation of the landscape plan, but there's no mention of ongoing maintenance. And I've seen situations before where that condition is cleared and the development is built and everyone gets on with their lives, and then landscaping dies and there's no recourse to get the body corporate or the individual owners or the developer to reinstate it. So is there an appetite to include wording like "and shall thereafter be maintained to the satisfaction of the City of Bunbury," or is that not something you'd like to contemplate?
I think in terms of the presiding member, in condition 13, where it talks about a landscaping plan to be submitted, there is reference to the maintenance there. So you're right, we would expect for that to be detailed when that plan is submitted.
Would you be amenable to tweaking condition 14 to say "and shall therefore thereafter be maintained to the city's satisfaction"?
Yes, we would.
Just noting that condition 15, which refers to a legal agreement, does make reference to the public open space maintenance as well. Yeah, but probably be worthwhile to clarify. Right.
Thank you, that's it.
Yeah. Councillor Kosisek, did you have any questions to the officers?
No, I think the submission and the report has been very well done and covered everything. No, I haven't. Sorry, my phone just rang then. So I'm happy with all the answers that have been responded to, and the couple of additions from Mrs. Page also very well thought of. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. If there's no further questions, thank you to the city's officers. We will now go to the item, and we have a recommendation to approve subject to conditions. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation in the RDAP?
Yeah, I'm happy to move that, absolutely.
Seconder, Ms. Premji.
Just very quickly, presiding member, foreshadow some of the addition to the conditions.
Yep, duly noted. Councillor Kosisek, did you want to talk to the motion?
Look, I don't think a lot needs to be said. I just think it's that particular plot of land on Back Beach in Bunbury has been vacant forever, and I think Bunbury residents will be very excited to see some very well built properties there under the developer. I think they're well designed. I really like the fact that they've used the gradient of the land to put in undercroft parking. I think they're substantially going to improve the area, and as everybody knows, lack of housing everywhere is an issue. So no, I'm really excited that this is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Premji, did you want to talk to the motion?
Yes, actually I agree with the councillor, because I moved to Bunbury in 1993, and it's nice to know that something's happening after all that time. So it was pleasing to read this report. Look, it's very well designed, and I say very well to the City of Bunbury and the applicant for working together so well and agreeing to the conditions in the advice notes. So yes, I second that, and just want to do it separately, presiding member, with the amendment to the other conditions.
Yeah, okay. And let's just see whether anyone's opposed to the motion firstly. Okay. Anyone opposed? Anyone else wanting to speak to the motion?
Very briefly.
Ms. Page?
I just wanted to echo the comments that have been made to a degree. I think the report was very well worded and provided all the information we needed. I guess I just wanted to recognise that there are a number of objections or submissions received that raised some concerns, and I just wanted to note that I think the city and the applicant have responded well to those. So they have been acknowledged, well considered, and I think you've provided a good response to the issues raised. I will agree that I think this is a good development for Bunbury, and I note that although the current planning framework might not accommodate pure residential development easily, your local planning strategy does contain a recommendation that that occurs. So the actions that will be undertaken do align with your planning strategy. So it's good that your strategic documents are so up to date, and you're to be commended on that.
Thank you, Ms. Page. I'll also be supporting the motion. I know the site reasonably well as well, and it will be nice to see some development in that location. In terms of planning framework, it seems to comply, so I'm happy from that perspective. In terms of the context, I think it's an appropriate context for a development like this, so I think it has merit, and I'm very happy to support it. Ms. Premji, you foreshadowed condition changes?
Yes, presiding member. So I was looking at condition 14 to add and shall thereafter be maintained to the satisfaction of the city. Condition 15 at the cost of the landowner. I think we can add that at the end of it, at the cost of the landowner.
Ms. Premji, given the different issues, I'm going to suggest we deal with one at a time if
okay.
So modify condition 14. I think that's clear. Is there a seconder for that?
Yes, I'm happy to second.
Ms. Page beat you, councillor. Is anyone opposed to it? If no one's opposed to it, that's carried.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Premji?
Condition 15, to just reading at it, prior to the issuing of a building permit, the landowner to enter into a legal agreement with the City of Bunbury at its cost, or at the landowner's cost, to ensure that the developer is responsible for provision, etc., etc.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor? Ms. Premji, did you want to talk to that motion?
No, thanks. Just making sure that there's no potential disagreement going down the track, that's all.
Councillor Kozisek, did you want to make any comment?
No, I think it's just well noted, thank you.
Okay. Is anyone wanting to speak against the motion? If not, I'm going to declare that carried. Ms. Premji, did you have any other changes?
No.
Ms. Page, you, I think, foreshadowed.
Yes, please, Mr. Presiding Member. So I'm suggesting that conditions 10, 11, 15, 20, 23, 25, 28 and 29 be amended very slightly to use the wording before submission instead of prior to issue of a building permit.
Okay. Is someone prepared to second that motion?
I'm happy to second, yes.
Councillor, thank you. Ms. Page, did you want to make any comment?
Nothing more to say, thanks.
Councillor, did you want to make any comment?
No, that's all good, thank you.
Okay. Is anyone opposed to it? If no, I'm going to declare that carried. Members, were there any other potential changes to conditions? No, in which case I'll revert to Councillor Kozisek. You moved the original motion. Did you want to make any closing comment?
Look, I'd just simply like to mention that I think the developer and the council staff have seemed to have worked very well on getting this to this stage. The report's very well written, and no, I'm just happy that it's happening. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor. In which case we have a motion to approve with conditions. We've agreed to 3 motions to modify some of those conditions. I'm going to put that. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. So we move through the balance of the agenda. Item 4, Form 2 applications, we have nil. Item 5, Section 31 SAT reconsiderations, we have nil. Item Part D, other business, we have item 1, SAT application and Supreme Court appeals. They're listed for noting. Item 2, general business. Members, any general business? In which case, we move to item 3, which is meeting closure. Thank you everyone for your participation. And I declare the meeting closed at 3:10. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.